This is Kigelia africana, the famous sausage tree. So we see, of course, the fruit. And what is also very interesting, we see the desynchronization between the different parts of the crown of the same tree. Because we see on the left, we see all the young leaves, but well developed. And on the right side, we see that leaves are only developing now. So it's good to see the sausage, hanging sausage. It's a nice flowering plant, very beautiful purple, dark purple flowers. Smell is not very good, but flower is beautiful.
Mama Africa. Mama, mama, mama Africa. You're so beautiful. Africa. Mama, mama, mama Africa. You're so wonderful. Africa. Mama, mama, mama Africa. You're so beautiful. Africa. Mama, mama, mama Africa. You're so wonderful.
Sì, via, via. Oh la bouille.
C'est mignon, hein?
It's a very nice face.
Geneta.
C'est un petit félin?
Non, c'est une autre famille qui est proche.
You can see this
Want
monkey.
to climb.
We've captured them. We've captured some, translocate them to other parts.
Végétal abida.
Ah, Phyllanthus, ok. Il est... Lui, il est because I did see in Asia, cattle they eat when it's young, so it's growing horizontally, same as the bush we did
it's
see
trying to
yesterday.
avoid, eh?
And you remember yesterday we did see carpeting, and after you did show me
Because animals take the top.
Yes, so I should like to see other to see if also it's able to grow horizontally like the same bush we did see yesterday. What was the name yesterday of the plant carpeting, and then you did not know?
It was similar. It was looking similar to Bushman tea. So I'm going to check the Bushman tea again, so they don't struggle here. So I think that's why they grow nicely. And there they're trying to protect themselves first, then find the growing point.
Exactly.
C'est où les grandes? Je vois à peine.
It's very black. Small. Very small, but very characteristic. Always two on each side of the junction of petiole and blade. It has beautiful flowers, is Jatropha or not?
Come here, look.
The flowers are
Yes, they do, yeah.
Yeah.
beautiful or not? Because many Jatropha have beautiful flowers. This one, no? Phyllanthus reticulatus, but it's the first time I see a climbing species of Phyllanthus. It's a half climbing.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
a reclining.
Here in the riverside, you see it.
Yeah.
I was pointing out to you this one.
Yeah, okay.
Presodesia.
It's a
Presodesia obovata.
Ah oui, Microcoelia, yes.
Microcoelia exilis.
Exilis, this one.
Because I've got exilis, I've got close to the lodge there. One time I had a Microcoelia megalobotrys.
Cassia.
Cassia, oui.
Not acacia.
No, Cassia.
Cassia.
Cassia, c'est
Abbreviata.
Ah, abbreviata. not
Cassia
megalobotrys.
abbreviata. Ok.
No sign of any medication here.
Yeah.
So, c'est la Stracea, I told you.
Yeah.
So it is Kata.
Kapha
Ah,
edulis.
okay, Bushman. Okay. So yeah, I did see it of leaves around Celastrace.
Cata edulis.
Là, il y a du monde. Hein. Ah oui, bah, la grosse masse foncée, c'est un énorme crocodile en fait. Je disais le lipo. Il est repu. Ah, il y en a fait un blanc, fleur.
I don't know what happened here.
Broken. Yeah. It's common, Adenium?
Impalas eat leaves,
Ah, they eat leaves.
but
With the
flowers
white
are
latex.
poisonous. Leaves they can eat, but the flowers no. You
Okay.
can see there is no one eating.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So it's made with the conifera, but from Arabic Peninsula.
I do have, I've got an argument on that one.
I'll show you, yeah. Because, see, it has nerves, same as a strychnose, so, see, nerves are same as strychnose, but obviously it's not a strychnose.
Someone say is this one, so
Branches show zigzag shapes. Okay.
the flower, we will see some of the flowers. The flowers are dry season.
Now it's very clear that this very beautiful
Yeah.
shrub with blue leaves is a member of the Caparaceae, because we see the petals here and we see the ovary at the end of the pistil, because it retains hopefully the dry petals. So typical member of Caparaceae.
Looks like bow stick.
It's incredible.
As sticky as a bow stick. Look, little bow stick.
Yeah.
But it's got
That's the
two
first.
seeds in one fruit.
Yes, 2 seeds in 1 fruit.
So the young one, the embryo.
Yeah.
Croton, you know?
Crotaria?
No one likes eating those.
Yeah.
If they eat, then they should not eat a lot. Otherwise, the animals will develop long curved hoofs. The hoofs shrink. And if you let your animals eat that Croton, it's poisonous to animals.
Okay.
We call it zebra wood.
Zebra
wood,
Ah,
yeah.
yes, because the design.
D'Albergia.
Okay. Schisiophyton. Monketi.
This is C. Combretum.
Ah, it's a Combretum?
Teculia
Not africana.
quinquiloba. Lobs. Quinquiloba.
Okay. It's always a small tree like this, or it becomes...
Yeah, can be a big tree, but not very tall.
Not
You know the name Lusaka?
Uh-huh.
Lusaka, Zambia. You know that?
Oui, Lusaka. Yeah,
That is
the city.
Lusaka.
Yeah, some
Pink.
small.
Bohemia.
White. Pink color.
C'est lequel alors?
C'est l'arbre, tu vois, qui est...
Non mais comment il s'appelle?
Toningi. Bohemia Toningi. Puis le stigma petite selle.
Oh.
Babies. Tiny babies.
these are more straight and more bluish. Sesbania leaves are more drooping. It's.
You think it can be a different
I
species?
think it's something else. Oh.
La vitesse.
They blame the tree for malaria.
For malaria, ah, yeah.
That's the name is known as the fever tree.
Ok.
Fever tree.
Non, c'est pas parce qu'il a la couleur jaune. Non, je crois pas que ça peut être ça, tout simplement.
Oui.
Ah, ouh.
Le pauvre le dérange.
Mangosteen.
Mangosteen, ok.
Ah, Garcinia, this is a Garcinia. Oh,
Et puis il a un poisson dans la bouche, hein.
he did
Ah là 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 là
he
là.
was successful. Always along the river like this.
Yeah.
Sterculia, appendiculata.
So you have a three Sterculia.
Yeah, in here. But I've seen in Majete you have more than that.
Okay, okay. Ooh, the smell is. How many people he did eat, you think?
This one. Ooh. No, the duck lamb.
Attends, je comprends rien. So what you said, the first is the ibis.
The first one is the open bill stock. The two, the fall on the bank.
Ah non mais c'est des hornbills ça, effectivement.
Ah, c'est terrestrial hornbill, okay.
People use them for
The
traditional medicine.
yes, terrestrial
That's
hornbill.
why they're endangered.
Endangered because they are used for, oh, it's terrible, this.
They're used for traditional medicine.
Crazy.
To see ahead. When they're in this family, they will not breed. It's only the father and the mother breed like people.
And the Salvadora is which species?
Salvadora pesca. It's there, should be there. Stimulated by the river.
Okay.
The river.
Yes, yes. Oh, beautiful male.
Oh, yeah.
The dominant male. He owns all these girls.
Ah, yes.
So there are some males living alone.
Yeah,
sure.
a lot. You don't want to share.
But they stay together or they are totally isolated?
They can stay together. The males stay together. Then the dominant male will come to challenge this one. For 13 days, then you're a bouncer. You're very strong. You're fighting other males.
Okay. So they have to fight always.
Fight for the right. Yeah.
Oh la la.
Yeah.
So much work for females.
They want to have a strong gene to survive in the wild.
Coculus hirsutus. Huge coculus. I know some small species of coculus which are shrubs, but this one.
Acampe.
Acampe premorsa.
But the tree is dead, no more shade.
Yes.
It will be struggling.
How many fruits? Yes, many fruits, developing fruits everywhere.
Spore cases.
And the flower is which color?
Yellow. Yellow with a brown dots.
Ah, brown dots, okay. Cladostemon kirki.
The stem.
Yeah.
Oh. Ah, yes. It's very beautiful.
The bush pig love it. Maybe it is when it becomes a little bit ripe, then the baboons will eat. But now they just look at it.
Which
Cladostemon.
Oh, il n'est pas content.
C-L-A.
Cladostemon. Okay. But 83% of the tree are the tree looking like Bohemia is actually, Samuel says, about 83% of the tree here in Mopane. Here on the Zomba Plateau at about 2,000 meters above sea level in southern part of Malawi, we see a very interesting Streptocarpus. Interesting because now we are in the dry season and we see clearly this line of desiccation of the lower part of the leaf, because this plant has only one leaf. It's a dicotyledon, so it has two small cotyledons. One dries out when it's only about 1 or 2 millimeters in diameter, and the other one grows and grows and grows during all the life of the plant. And during each dry season, a part of this cotyledon dries out at the end. It's a little bit the same as we can see in the Welwitschia, for instance, in the desert part of Namibian desert. And here, for instance, on these small individuals, we see clearly that it was much longer, but all this part is totally dried out, but the first proximal part is still perfectly alive. We see this also for the other one here. All the ending part of the cotyledon is dry, but the proximal part is still alive. Same everywhere. So this plant can live usually many years, but we have very few exact data about that. Once it begins to flower, usually flowering lasts for many months, and it seems that usually it dies after. But before flowering, it can take many years. Of course, this plant is probably older, 1 year more than this one, and probably this one is also 1 year less, and these ones are probably still 1 year less. So probably we have 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years of growth of plants. We see that the cotyledon is perfectly fixed, totally covering the rock or it's not a rock, it's a earth bank, a vertical earth bank, totally covering, so it reduces totally transpiration, a perfect adaptation to survive during the dry season.
Qu'est-ce que c'est beau!
This Melastomataceae with very beautiful bright purple flower is a shrubby species of the genus Disotis. It's an African genus, and it is very interesting to see that in the young stages it has a tuber at the base totally fixed to the rocks, and from this tuber emerge different stems, so it can survive perfectly well to the dry season on this very steep vertical cliff environment.
One more day. Zomba.
our first sight of an impatiens. Here at this altitude, we're about 1,500 meters above sea level. They are close to the rivers. We listen to the river, close to the waterfall in Zomba, and impatiens are typical of these very humid habitats. And even now, during the heart of the dry season, we see it's not so dry because they are perfectly growing and flowering. It's always good to see the Thunbergia in their wild habitat, in their natural native habitat. This is Thunbergia alata. It is grown and escaped in all tropical countries, but here we see it growing in its habitat. The shape of the lobes, looking like petals, are not very similar to the one commonly cultivated. I don't know if it's native or if it's introduced. That is very beautiful, and it gives the fruit. We did it. Not very sweet.
Yes, very sweet.
Very sweet.
Yeah, very sweet. Yeah.
Here we see very beautiful specimen of the cuscuta, because usually we see them from very far and without flowers. And here we see all the flowers, and it's very interesting because it's convolvulacea, so morning glory. It's totally parasitic. We see all the stems, yellowish stems, growing and sucking the sap of all the plants. Here it's mostly an escaped Passiflora edulis, the passion fruit, and it turns around, but the flowers, actually, we see that the shape is really the shape of the morning glories. We see it's an inflated base on 5 lobes, so it looks like quite closed morning glory. And so I'm very happy to see it flowering like this. It's a species with big, beautiful flower. This is a beautiful old individual of a Dracena studneri. This is a species typical of the mountains of southern part of Malawi. Here we are in the Zomba Plateau, but we can find it also in Mulanje and all this area, and also in other parts, other countries around, but very typical here. We see the dry capsular fruits of probably Streptocarpus gudzi with blue flowers, but of course now we don't see the flower, it is the dry season, but we see the typical twisted capsule, and this is the main difference with the other genus Kigelia, for instance, and Codonomea has straight capsular fruits in Southeast Asia, mostly in Malaysia. So here Streptocarpus is mostly from southern part of Africa, and especially South Africa, but also some species, about 12 or something like that in Malawi. We see the dry cotyledon. Now it's dead, totally dry, so everything is dry. We see it's not strictly annual plant because it lives many years before flowering, but it's a monocarpic plant in the sense that it dies after flowering. So it can live many years with the leaf, the cotyledonar leaf, bigger and bigger each year. So we see very young specimen here, for instance, but with the ending part dry. We see some older ones, always with the dry part here, and older, and this probably next year will be flowering because the size is the same as the dead one. So this one probably will soon flower and die just after. Here we see probably the first stage of the development of the cotyledon, of the macrocotyledon of the Streptocarpus, and we see that it's only about 3 mm long, but it means that it was from last year because it did germinate in the rainy season, and now it has already this tiny dry part. So we see that it is the first year. Here we see probably second year individual. We see some bigger and bigger here. So it's interesting to see all this generation, and each individual has the same habit, drying the upper part of the leaf Microcoelia during the dry season. This very shiny fern is not at all a tree fern. Actually, it's a member of the Maratiaceae, and we see it's a Maratiaceae to the very tough leaflets, and also the swollen part at the base of the pinnae. We see here very swollen part, typical of Maratiaceae, belong to the genus Maratia, a very primitive family with the stipules at the base of the fronds. We know very well in Southeast Asia a very common species which is Angiopteris ebecta, but this is probably a Maratia. Perfect glass. So, oui, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh la la. Very, very strange structure. I think it cannot be a kind of a flowering plant. A totally irregular branching, crested. We see at the base of the younger structure, we see a kind of yellow powder, which could be spores. I guess this could be a fungus, probably a parasitic fungus because it's growing from the end of the twigs, and I think it's probably not very good for the plant. But I did not know that we could see parasitic coral-shaped fungus like this. Yeah, so closer to the very pure water of the river, we see a Pilea, a carpeting Pilea, so member of the Urticaceae. We can see them everywhere in the tropical world, in America, in Asia, and here in Africa. This very beautiful bright blue pea flower is obviously a member of Fabaceae. I don't remember the name, but I know it very well, and it's interesting because it is in the high mountains of East Africa, but also in the Himalaya, and it seems it is actually the same species. This form is very beautiful for the color of the flower, of course, but also for the leaves, which have a medium silvery band in each of the three leaflets, so everything is beautiful in this plant. Beautiful Hypericum species with big flowers, and it's interesting because branches are very plagiotropic, so the flowers at the end of the twigs are very well exposed. I think this is a local conifer, the genus Witheringtonia, which is typical of southern part of Africa, especially in the mountains.
Another one. C'est pas la même, tu penses?
No, it's not the same as yesterday. It has very round leaves. This one has very long leaves. But probably it's also a Disotis, because there are some shrubby species of Disotis here. Here we see climbing asparagus. It is Asparagus cetaceus, but most commonly known under the name Asparagus plumosus. And it's typical of East Africa. Funny to see this species so commonly cultivated in Europe in its native habitat, perfectly climbing here in forest, very humid forest understory. Looking like a papillonacea, but it's not at all a papillonacea. We see the typical two wings on each side and the fine hair. Here in this case, very beautiful purple hair. The structure of the flower is typical of the Polygalaceae and especially the genus Polygala. This is almost certainly a Polygala. So this is a big Kalanchoe, flowering Kalanchoe, with a beautiful orange corolla and greenish sepals as well as stamens and pistil. And the leaves are perfectly pinnate. It has pinnate leaves. We see the huge terminal inflorescence. This non-flowering individual has better leaves.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, this one is good. Cannot say if it's a sedum or something else, but of course it's a succulent plant growing directly on the bare rocks. I don't know what it is. The base keeping water during the dry season. I see the leaves. I don't think it's a sedum or something. I should like to see the flowers, but I don't think it's maybe not at all a Crassulaceae. It's probably not a Melastomataceae, but in some cases Melastomataceae also tuberous like this. I don't know what it is. Totally perfectly adapted to the vertical surface of these granitic rocks.
Yeah.
It's very beautiful. Many different things are growing on this surface of the rock. Also this one, which has different colors. Here it's much more red. Here it's bigger, but it's obviously the same thing. So this is one thing. We see the dried inflorescence. Why it could not be a kind of Kalanchoe, species of Kalanchoe, because we see dry. So this is something else. When very young, they have tubers, and after, when growing, they have long stems. Miracle of the nature.
At the beginning, they have tuber.
Yes, when young.
At the beginning of their life.
Yes. Beautiful Cussonia trees here on the summit of the Zomba Plateau. We are probably around 1,650 or 1,700 meters above sea level, and many of the poor remaining trees are actually the Cussonia Araliaceae member. All the erect stems at the top are future inflorescence. And we see the very young, totally dark red leaves. And so it's strange that these are almost the only trees remaining on the plateau here. It's really a forest dominated by Cussonia. Their most important survival. All the inflorescence, infructescence of the Araliaceae. And I'm surprised to see this shape, because usually it's much more separate berries, but here they are totally congested. If actually it's fruit, if it's not young inflorescence, we should need to look more closer.
Lundi 14 août.
We see perfectly the shrubby species of a Disotis, this Melastomataceae, which has tuberous basal part when it is young and fixed to the rock. And here we see in the morning the perfectly open flowers, looking like the Tibucina from South America. Probably it's a Protea, because there are not as many species as in South Africa, but there are quite a quite a lot, and especially in this kind of environment.
L'osia, valerianacée.
These fruits are most probably fruits of an Aracea, and in this kind of habitat in East Africa, it's probably fruit of a stylocheton, which are typical of these dry environments. So now leaves, of course, are produced during the rainy season, and now fruits are ripening. Beautiful patch of the Phoenix reclinata, which is quite common in this southern part of Malawi, at least at above 1,500 meters above sea level, and it is a clump forming species. We see many stems growing together. It has very fine leaves, and of course Mulanje mountain is just behind the Phoenix reclinata. It should be better. We could walk a little bit.
Yeah, then a bit more
Liwonde.
sightseeing.
It was the occasion to visit Blanc, because it was not
It was
private
okay.
side. Yes.
It was Likoma, we'll see. We'll see. Well, what we see now, of course, is only degraded landscape. But you see eucalyptus, if we like eucalyptus, mango trees, and manioc growing everywhere. But natural vegetation, except some baobabs, some acacias also, and some small plants, of course.
Un matin, à Likoma.
We see a huge species of Sansevieria among the rocks on the shore of the Likoma island. It has very thick, very wide leaves, but also, what is strange, each stem has many leaves and not only one or two leaves. It's a little bit like a kind of agave. We see each stem has 3, 4, 5 leaves, and it's not so usual.
un matin. Likoma.
Seems to be a very beautiful place. We see the so beautiful Euphorbia, I think Euphorbia cooperi, and rocks everywhere, so I'm sure that the Mbuna will be very happy. Here in this area called the Black Rock, is granitic rock of course, we see that the water is exceptionally clear, so we can see very well the fish, and we see many males defending their territory, a piece of rock that they are cleaning and eating all the algae. So it's the most clear place we have seen up to now. Not so many fish here, but very beautiful ones. Là c'est beau, le village. Une orchidée ça. Oui, c'est vrai que c'est...
The boat from Mozambique, no? Oh là, les bagnoles sont venues.
Timbenge tingarua, timbenge tingarua, timbenge tingarua. Tiyeni tikumbuke tose, tiyeni tikumbuke tose. Timbenge tingarua mama. Mbanga kale ine, nkimbanga kale ine kwa mbiri nditu. Timbenge tingarua, timbenge tingarua, tiyeni tikumbuke. Mama mwanirenga pakunipa wanarume mama. Wonani sono ine vyalema kale. Timbenge tingarua, timbenge tingarua, timbenge tingarua. Tingarua.